Good evening and welcome to another edition of Down to the Wire. I'm your host, rheologist, and joining me again this week is Capping with Candace. Candace here. Candace, the Belmont Stakes day has arrived, and it's a full card and a lot of full fields. We're going to focus in on some of the more interesting races that we thought, and then kind of try to help people out in that pick three with Mile, the Manhattan, and the Belmont. But first off, let's start it off with the Woody Stevens, and I think we wanted to bring up this race because there's some good horses here. And last year, it was in this race that Bayern, I thought, ran one of the better performances of the day.
Yeah, I absolutely was very impressed with Bayern when he won this race last year. I think you could actually argue it was maybe the best performance by a 3-year-old all year long. At least to that point, I thought it was. This year, we have a little bit smaller field and perhaps a heavier favorite in the likes of Competitive Edge, who comes here for Pletcher. I saw him at Churchill Downs for the Pat Demel, and he looked spectacular in the flesh and backed it up with a huge win. And he's just a horse who thrives over the 7 furlong distance. And really, I don't think any of them, if he runs his race, I don't think any of them can beat him. And they're probably running for second in here. But maybe one who we could use underneath him, or I would actually probably play this just like hold exacta with the Pletcher horse's Competitive Edge over 2 weeks off. I thought 2 weeks off got, kind of a raw deal after the Peter Pan. A lot of people were really hard on him because he went off as the 4-5 favorite and finished third, but I really thought that the pace did not suit him in that scenario, and perhaps 9 furlongs was a little bit too far, but to that point he had done absolutely nothing wrong, beating some pretty decent horses along the way as well. So for me, it's Competitive Edge over 2 weeks off, but Competitive Edge will be a heavy favorite here, and rightfully so.
Kind of an interesting approach, Competitive Edge. He's undefeated. He came out with them. He was the talk of the Saratoga when he broke his maiden, and then they ran him in that fast Hopeful, which he kind of dominated. Then he had surgery. And rather than, pushing them onto the trail, really the plan since January was they were not going to run the Derby. They kind of mapped it out where they'd run the Pat Day, and then now they keep him sprinting. I mean, how good is he? And he isn't defeated, and this seems like a logical spot for him. But do you think they might? I mean, we've heard a little bit of rumors now that maybe they will stretch him out for the Haskell, maybe give him one shot. That would just make him worth so much more as a stallion.
Yeah, and I think he's earned that chance to stretch out. I think that distance will be a little bit sketchy for him, but at least we know he's, good over the 7 furlong trip. And to be honest, I mean, this is a field that if he's as good as we think he is, he should win easily. It's not a strong field. It's not nearly the size of the field as I expected in this race, and not a strong one. Perhaps the only horses in here who've really done anything is Ready for Rival on the Swale, but I thought in the Bayshore that he was nowhere near as good as he had been in the Swale. I was pretty surprised by how poor of an effort he put in there, actually. And March won that Bayshore, but March is kind of the opposite to that point. March really hadn't done anything, so you wonder, did he just jump up and capitalize on fast fractions there that he probably won't get this time around? So lots of question marks around everyone else in this race.
Yeah, March I wasn't impressed with. I thought, he had the back angle going for him, and he took advantage of that. But, I think he's facing a whole nother level of horses here in Competitive Edge, and 2 weeks off, he'll get fractions. It's just he's facing better horses this time. So I don't like the 2-month layoff after a race like that. It seems kind of odd to me. I agree with you. I think it's a straight, exact Competitive Edge, who I think is a really nice horse. I think he could get up to a mile, and a mile and a 16th, maybe a mile and an eighth in a race with no other speed, he might be able to win, at least for one crack. I do think the last race, like you say, I didn't really get down on 2 weeks off after that race. It's asking a lot for a horse to go 9 furlongs in his second race of the year, in his third lifetime race, and the fractions were 110.2, and he was facing, Made from Lucky and some good horses. So, yeah, it was a small field, and for my fantasy older stable, I wish he would have won. I had him in that league, but I thought he ran a good race. I was kind of hoping they would run an easy goer because I haven't really given up on him on a distance horse, but maybe they want to close into this race, run second, and then they can stretch out in the next race. So I think that's kind of my straight Woody Stevens exacta, but you're right. Last year we had 13 horses, and this year we get 5.
Yep, seems like we see this one kind of the same way, but will it be
Yeah, and
an
they carved it the
interesting?
first race of the day, so that's a little bit unusual. So
Yeah,
I think they just took the short field and ran it as the first race.
yeah, I think so.
Let's kind of get into the heart of the order here later on in the card. First off, the Met Mile. This has been a highly anticipated race, and they've really kind of made this a centerpiece race as one, really the second biggest race of the year. I think behind Belmont Stakes on the New York circuit.
They have in this race. Maybe it isn't quite as good as we had anticipated a few weeks ago, but I still think it's a pretty good race and a pretty nice betting race. We get Private Zone on the rail, who it's interesting because he's a speed horse, so you think that he would like that position, but I actually really don't like him in that spot purely because the horse to the outside of him is Bay of Plenty, so I expect him to be pressured on the outside from the get-go because the Bay of Plenty is also a horse who has some forward early speed in there. Byron should go forward as well. He's coming off of a very poor effort at Churchill Downs, but it was almost an effort that to me was too bad to be true. I just think he probably wasn't cranked off the very long layoff, and we'll see what he shows here, but for him to have a chance, he needs to show some of that early speed. So those are kind of your three pace setters. The issue in this race for me is that we kind of have two groups. We have a few horses who go forward. We have a lot of horses who are deep closers. And then we have horses who are stretching out, who are really sprinters, some who are cutting back, who are really routers. And for me, the horse I ended up on here, and I've talked about him on Twitter, is Tamarcuz. He comes in here from Dubai for a few reasons. One, he has tactical speed, which I would actually say pretty much every horse in this field, save Tonalist and maybe Wicked Strong, don't have. So that already is going to give him an advantage on deep closers like Honor Code. They'll go good at a good pace here, but I don't expect it to be a pace meltdown. So that tactical speed is going to be important. I also think he's one of the few horses in here who thrives over a mile. A mile is his trip. That's not the same that can be said for at least the favorites in this race. He's run really well, comes in here in great form by winning several races in a row overseas. His last race in particular was really impressive. He missed the break and came all the way through what was some pretty gnarly kickback out there. Out wide and ended up winning the race over Sloan Avenue, who's a nice horse in his own right. So Tamarcuz, I think we're going to get a good price on him. You can see him working. He's the work made of Frosted in recent works on YouTube, and I much preferred him to Frosted in those works as well. So I think they have him, ready to run as good as he can, and it's a class test, and it's just a matter of whether or not he's good enough. But I think he's certainly going to get the race shape and the pace set up to flatter him as best as he can.
Kind of an interest, I had a couple of thoughts on Bairn. This horse, last year he got really good, and it kind of started off on this day with his Woody victory. I was looking at his workouts the other night, and I noticed, as a 4-year-old, he's got like 9 workouts this year, and his training's been interrupted a couple of times. But in the middle of them, all of a sudden, Baffert worked him out 3 straight times out of the gate, twice before that Churchill race and once after. And last year, Bairn never had any gate issues. In fact, I would argue that's why he won 2 or 3 of those races. He leaped out of the gate so fast, opponents thought he was going faster than he was, and they let him get off by 2-3 lengths. And I'm just wondering if Baffert's seeing something in the morning that he doesn't think this horse has the gate speed, because he never worked out gate workouts last year. He's got 9 workouts. He slow that last race. I just didn't see any stride extension. I just can't take him facing other pace pressure, and just kind of a bunch of little things are adding up. Like, it's June, and he's really running a second race. He's been working out since January. His training was interrupted. I didn't see any stride extension that last race. So he's kind of a hard call for me, but I'm kind of taking him out of the equation. I think his pace, I'm not even sure he's going to be that much. I mean, yeah, it kind of worries me that he might not even be that much up on the pace.
Yeah, and his training, I think, in and of itself has been very interesting. Before the Derby, some people were saying that Baffert was, being aggressive with Pharoah with his training compared to Byron. I wonder now if it's actually the opposite. Now that we've seen what Pharoah has done, I wonder if in reality they were having to be very patient with Byron, and he hasn't been pushed as hard in the mornings as it's been typical of him when he's really in form.
So I really took a deep look at this race. I really got it down to two horses, and two horses I've been looking at for over a month. Pharoah is 4 for 4 at Belmont. Was super impressed with his mile race the last time. It was a small field, which that worked to his advantage and against his advantage. I thought, sometimes a horse coming off a layoff could maybe suffer there. Loved his gallop out. That horse was cranked for that race. Got a monster speed figure by Equibase, which surprises me. They gave him a 124, which is so far out of the ordinary. Like visually, it was a good, impressive race. And then Wicked Strong, I think is going to get overlooked a little bit on the board. And I would say that I think maybe 5-6 to 1. But I loved his last race. I love the fact that coming out of that mile race, they went 1.25 miles. FNX was better that day, but the third split to the mile split was about a 23 4/4. He made a move into that split, and guess what? That just hits him right between the eyes in a mile race, and he's going to get some speed in front of him. So I'm picking Tonalist. I'm using two horses, Wicked Strong and Tonalist. Honor Code's going to get the pace. It wouldn't surprise me if that last race was just a total sandbag race, because he did kind of make up a little bit of ground. He's just been getting so far behind, though. I know he's going to come motoring late, but is he going to win? But that's why I'm not going to pick him. But I still think he's better than a horse like Private Zone with this much pace. And I still think ultimately Grade 1 races at this level are won by Grade 1 classy horses. And to me, that's Honor Code, Baron, Honor Code, Tonalist, and Wicked Strong. And it would be Baron if I felt that he had form. So I'm going with Tonalist. But Wicked Strong is really, to me, the horse that could get any of these exotics to pay anything if we can get him up.
I'm with you in that I'm against Private Zone. I think he's been flattered by some races where he didn't have the pace pressure that was expected, like last time out with Bayern. He's had some races where it's been on, very speed favoring tracks. That Cigar Mile in particular was very inside speed favoring, and he capitalized on that. So I don't think he's quite as good as people see when they look at his form and just look at, win, second behind Honor Code, win. I don't think he's quite all that good, and I don't think a mile is his best distance. I think he really is better at 7 furlongs, and the pace pressure is going to make it tough. Like I said, my top choice is Tamer, because one thing I did want to point out too is that I know often people tend to be kind of down on horses coming from overseas to run in America, but bear in mind that Tamer Kuz's pedigree is all America. He's by Spadestown out of a Lemon Drop Kid mare, so whereas a horse like Moop Tahij comes in here with an international pedigree, and people are wary of that, understandably so. Tamer Kuz is absolutely bred for this type of a surface. I agree with you on Wicked Strong is one I'm going to use underneath. I also thought that he ran really well. I actually thought he ran well in both of his starts this year, even his Gulfstream Park handicap. A lot of people were kind of on his case after that race, and I thought he closed in nicely in a race that, was his distance was a mile, but is, probably a touch short of his best, but I think he can close into second here now, third start off the layoff, and we know Jergens, kind of points for these sorts of races, these big races up in the East Coast, up in New York. So Tamer Kuz and Wicked Strong are really the two that I plan on using a lot here, along with Honor Code, just in case they go really fast and he gets that set up. I can't pick Tonalist just because I think that ultimately at this level, I think this is too short. He'll be there. He'll run. I'd be surprised if he wasn't in the mix and didn't run an honest race, but my gut tells me that at the Grade 1 level, a mile is too short for him. He'll be a heavy favorite, but he's not one that I'm going to use. So Tamer, Kuz, Wicked Strong, and Honor Code for me.
Hopefully we get actually a good race. Sometimes we get these races all lined up, and in our mind they're going to be really good, and then half the horses don't show up, and after the race we kind of herald the winner. And so yeah, I hope we actually see a couple of lead changes. I hope Honor Code fires even if he doesn't win. Like you say, I just kind of want to see a horse race, and if we get that, I think then we've got, especially even Baron. I want Baron to run well. I just am dubious that he's gonna. I'd love to see Baron win it, but I just everything in my handicapping arsenal says, why is he all of a sudden working out of the gate? He never had any gate issues last year. Why did he break slow in that last race out of the gate? Why didn't he have stride extension, even if he was broke slow. His stride was short, even if he was. I mean, there was just so many things, and then plus the workout starts and stops. So, I hope we get a really good race and ideally a fast time, just so that we can legitimately say, this older crop is legit. I'd like to see the win get about a 115 speed figure. So, but I do think Honor Code, Wicked Strong, and Toneless are the top three in the older division, and I think they're going to dominate all the Saratoga action and the Breeders' Cup action. I think those are the three that I've settled on, and I just a matter of which one wins at the mile distance and which one can hold their form the rest of the summer. But I think those are the horses, and we'll see what happens. The Manhattan. This is kind of one of those races where all these guys are facing each other, and third, fourth, fifth time, and sometimes it just becomes a take turns race. But that really didn't happen last year. Last year they never took turns. Main Sequence just kind of kept on winning. But I think this year, we're going to see some more taking of turns.
I think part of the reason we'll see that, though, is because all these races seem to be drawing very large fields, and some horses are getting a lot of trip trouble. A horse who I like in here, and I picked him in the Dixie, is Legendary. I was sad that he had as much trouble as he did in there, because I had my money on him, but I was impressed with his run. He was steadied multiple times in there. He had to go very wide. I think the chart said he went 10 wide. I was trying to count. He was off the screen in the replay. But he still closed into finishing 5th there. I thought that was a very impressive run, considering all the trouble that he had throughout that race, and considering they didn't go very fast out front. So he had to close into some soft fractions in there. He stretches out now to 1.25 miles, which is a distance he's very good over, very consistently runs in the top 2 over this distance. And I like that they've kind of incrementally stepped him up in trip. I think that'll help him as well now here, third time off of what was a decently long layoff. So I'm going to take Legendary on top in this spot. One horse I want to talk about, though, who I will be using, is Magic Artist, who comes in here from Italy, who sports some actually pretty nice form, running in top-class Italian races. Last year in Germany in a Group 2, he finished 2nd to a horse named Here Comes When. It's a very nice horse. That was over a mile, but it's soft ground. He also ran close as a 3-year-old in behind See the Moon, who was a very promising German runner. Actually, a horse they were very excited about for the Arc before he unfortunately got injured. So this is a horse who wants this trip, and it's an interesting runner because we typically don't see horses come over here from Italy unless they've kind of wildly lost form, and this horse comes here in very nice form. So my gut tells me they're here looking for firm ground and a little bit of class relief, because he's not going to be using Lasix, and he comes in here with his normal jockey. So I think they're very serious about this spot. This has been the plan, is to run him here. The distance is good. I know rain is only a mild possibility, but any sort of rain he would handle. But my gut tells me they're coming here looking for some firm ground, some class relief, and maybe a stepping stone to the Arlington Million. So while Legendary is my top choice, Magic Artist is a horse that shouldn't be forgotten, and I have a feeling that because a lot of people don't know Italian and German form, they won't recognize the horse names. They'll see he's not on Lasix. I think he could easily get ignored, and you could get a pretty nice price on him in here as well.
Yeah, I thought Big Blue Kitten had a good comeback race. Finnegan's Wake, we kind of know what he is at this point. He got the lucky head bob the last time, and I thought Twilight Eclipse got his win the last time. So yeah, ultimately my top pick is Magic Artist. And I think on this day, because of this crowd that's out there for the Belmont, normally a horse like this would just be, the hardcore players would have this horse at 5-2 on the board, and this horse is just the class of the race. He's won 9 races in Germany. People just don't understand. The German horses and the Italian horses, that is breeding. That is the old way of running. They run 1.5 miles. They run 1 mile and 3/4. They don't allow any drugs. They breed only the best of the best. You can't breed until you're 4 and 5 years old. They carry 132 pounds. Just everything that is right about horse racing is done in Germany and Italy. Granted, they don't have high purses, and they don't run long meets, and it is what it is. It's just meant to be who has the best horse. It has nothing to do with guys trying to make a buck or somebody to. So I think this horse is tough. He's the class of the field, and I think he. I mean, we've seen allowance horses come from England and win over here our grade ones. I think this horse has much better form, and like I say, normally on a normal day, I think a horse like this would be 5-2, 2-1. I'll be lucky to get 9-2, 5-1, and I think he's going to win this race. Unless he's just severely off form and they sold him at some sale that I don't know about, I just think he's over here to start a globetrotting tour, and maybe we'll see him in the Arlington Million, and we might see him at Woodbine or something like that.
Yeah, I think 5-1 would be very nice. I'd be very happy if we got that price on him. One thing I wanted to say, and you kind of touched on it with German form and racing, and I know we don't get a lot of German races here, but especially some of these longer trips, these more stamina-inducing trips, Germany has become very strong in that department. A German horse won. I mean, over much further, but a German horse won the Melbourne Cup last year, so the form in that department is very nice. And like I said, See the Moon, who appears in his form multiple times, was an early kind of favorite for the Arc before he got injured. His one poor race is the German Derby. I would completely draw a line through that race. It was a very oddly run race all around, so not a race that I would be at all concerned about with him. But completely agree, class of the field, and I like that he has this jockey. It's just everything about him in this spot makes me think this has been the absolute plan. So, but I'll be going, like I said, too deep here, though, with him, and then with Legendary.
The Belmont Stakes, the 147th running, and the 13th time since 1978 that we're attempting to get a Triple Crown winner.
Yeah, and I'm going to be really boring and say that I think it's going to happen. This is the opposite. I remember last year when we did this video, we were both so excited. We're like, tonalist, medal count. Like, we were all in against California Chrome, and I just don't have this feeling this time around. American Pharoah is so different than Chrome in that he has just that high cruising speed that he can carry for a distance of ground, and it makes me have much more confidence that he can stay this trip. And he just comes here in great form. He's working well. He's had no issues, no problems. There's nothing about anything I've seen from him that makes me think he's going to lose this race.
We didn't even have the opossum getting his way.
No possum. He had nothing, and I know, pretty much the consensus of what I see is people say Materiality's going to go after Pharoah, that'll soften them up and somebody else will win. But I just don't even see that happening. I think in races, big day races like this, if there's a decision to go one way or the other, almost always connections tend to be more passive with a good horse than they do aggressive. And to an extent, it makes sense. I mean, yeah, you want to win the race, but you don't want to ruin your race at the same time. I expect Materiality to be just in behind Pharoah and wait there, and if Pharoah doesn't stay the trip, he'll be there to pounce, but I don't think he's going to aggressively try to tackle American Pharoah. And so you're kind of leaving it out of your own hands in that type of a race. I think Pharoah wins it. I think the only horse who really can beat him is Materiality, and that's about it. I mean, there's a lot of horses. I think all the horses in this race who truly stay this trip are too slow. So it kind of takes a little bit of the allure out of it that I think we had last year.
Yeah, there's a lot of differences between last year and this year. California Chrome last year, I don't think it was no secret that he had lost a little bit of weight. He definitely just didn't seem to have the energy level the last couple of days galloping around, where Pharoah seems to still have energy. I also think that Baffert is going to be more aggressive than Chrome's connections were last year, but maybe Chrome's connections knew what was up, and they said, don't go out there and let them run last. Let's at least give ourselves a shot, and let's kind of sit third or fourth. So we never really know the full story. I just know Baffert in cases like this, he'll get aggressive, and I think last year, Victor was either told to do what he did or he elected to do that, but Baffert has sent his horses, and I think he'll just send this horse. I think American Pharoah's going to win by 5-7 lengths. I think this is the last race of his career. I think they want the media is just going to eat this up. Zayat wants the attention. Baffert want, I mean, they ain't going to say it, but they want this horse to win by 10. They don't want it to be close. They want this horse to be America's hero. And we're finally going to get our Triple Crown winner. I think it's 2 straight exactas, and I'm going to play a straight exacta, American Pharoah over Frosted and Mubtahij.
Yeah.
Mubtahij has worked out 5 times during the month of May. I was anti this horse in the Derby because of the quarantine and training over them, but I mean, I just still think he's better than Keen Ice and Fermento and these other clowns. And you know what? Everybody's going to play the all button because of Talaver. And if a American Pharoah Frosted Exacta gets me $11, that's better than $280. And if Mubtahij somehow gets second and that's $18 or $19, that's better than $280 to win on Pharoah. So how would you bet this race? And I guess how are you going to bet this race?
No, that's how I'm very similar. I'm just gonna keep Pharoah on top, and then underneath I'm gonna put Materiality and move to Hege. I do think Pharoah wins. I'm just trying to kind of bolster his odds because I don't really want 3 to 5 here. So I'm trying to get 2, 3, 4 to 1 if I can. Materiality, I kind of already said. Materiality, he's a tough horse because he's my type of horse. Everything about him, he reminds me of Palace Malice going into the Belmont, but with not quite the stamina pedigree, but just looks every bit a progressive type. Materiality is a horse I can already tell you that if he stays healthy, he's so the type I would want in the Jim Dandy, in the Travers, in the Jockey Club Gold Cup, in those sorts of races. I question whether or not he's ready yet, but I think he's going to be very, very, very nice. So I do think he could finish second here on class alone. Move to Hege, I completely agree. I was very against him in the Derby. I don't think he can win this race, but he does have stamina, and that's just something a lot of these horses don't have. And if he could just kind of sit in there mid-pack, he'll get first jump on a lot of these deep closers, and he'll stay. So, if he can sneak in there and get second, him or Materiality, well then, I made a little bit off Pharoah, and I'm okay with that.
Well, and good points here. I think a lot of times people confuse stamina with slow. I consider Fermento and Keen Ice slow. I consider Mubtahij stamina. I just think that's 2 different things. Trust me, I have stamina. I run all day long, but I run marathons in 4 hours. I mean, I'm not fast enough. I mean, that nobody's going to say, oh, he's got stamina. No, I'm slow. Like, some of these horses, they're not closing. They're not giving any indication that extra quarter of a mile is going to get them anywhere near the area code of. I agree with you. I actually think Materiality is the second best horse, but here's my philosophy on that is Pletcher almost, people talk about 2 Belmonts he's won. For some reason, Pletcher gets his horses to run in the Belmont. He almost stole 3 Belmonts. Stay Thirsty was 20 to 1 and ran second. Dunkirk was 15 to 1 and ran second. And last year, Commissioner was 22 to 1 and ran second. All went to the lead. I think Materiality is going to go to the lead, and I just think Pharoah's going to outclass him, and I think by going to win the race, he's not going to run second. I think if he tried to run second, he would run second. But that's just the way I see it. I mean, yeah, that's why I'm not picking him second, and I'm just, Frosted's a grinder, and he's better than those other clowns, and I think Mubtahij sitting at the rail just may outfinish him as well.
Yeah, and when I was in the Stakes, we were talking how we were going to preview kind of our, pick 3 into this race, and for me, I'm going to single Pharoah here. I want to remind people from my sufferings the last couple of years this is the one race I've gotten right the last couple of years. With Totalist last year, at Palace the year before, and I remember both times hitting the pick 3 into this race and being kind of disappointed at how much it paid considering their prices in the win pools. But in, the pick 3s in the doubles, they were very found out by those types of bettors. So if you are someone who's planning to play Materiality or Frosted, expect one of those 2 to be hammered in the pick 3 pool. It will happen. I don't know which one. I want to lean towards it being Materiality, but one of them is going to be a big, big underlay in the pick 3 pools. He'll be the wise guy horse. So if you like either of those 2, it might actually be more beneficial to you to just bet them to win than to play in the pick 3. Whereas I think the pick 3, if you like Pharoah, is going to offer you more value. I think he'll pay better than 2 to 5 or whatever he goes off at to win in that sequence, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's, we've seen the betting kind of just change over the last 10 years where everybody just wants to be alive going into the Belmont. So they take all of these second and third string horses on multiple tickets. Um, and, the thing is, even at Met Mile, there's four horses that can win, but I just think everybody's going to take all four of them. I just don't know if there's going to be much value there. I mean, and then Manhattan could go either way. God, Lord help us if Finnegan's Wake wins or Big Blue Kitten. It may not pay anything
Might
even with
not pay
Pharoah
much.
or no matter who wins. So
Yeah.
I'm just not sure. I mean, to be honest, I may play a small pick six just because do I expect to get rich? But no, but it's the only way I think you can win $2,000 on this day.
Yeah.
I just think the days of going into these races and these $5,000 pick fours, they're just not paying that, and they're not paying $500 in pick threes anymore. And you either got to, I think there may be like I say, I think at this exacta at $10 or $11, if you play it for $100, at least you can pull a couple $100 out of the race. I just think people are really fooling themselves on what these pick fours and pick threes pay. I plan on doing a blog on it and showing the dramatic decrease. And I think people in their mind are envisioning these big payoffs, but you know what? They're not happening. And a lot of it has to do with the 50-cent increments once they went to that. But the second thing is everybody just plays everybody on every race now, and their only goal is to hit the ticket and not try to make money. And that's just made these payoffs so much less.
Yeah, and maybe a better strategy might even be, and you've talked about this with the Derby, but there's a few races after this Belmont Stakes, so maybe a better strategy would perhaps be playing, multi-race ticket starting with the Belmont or starting with the Manhattan, and try to use the allowance races after the Belmont are pretty nice and some big fields where you could get some prices in there, so that that might actually be more conducive to a larger payoff than that sort of a wager. But yeah, it just seems like some of these horses, I just think, especially in the Belmont, they'll go off at a price these years where we have, a horse trying to win the Triple Crown, but they're so found out in these pools. I know especially Tonalist last year, I think, was incredibly found out in the pick threes, and it was just there was a lot more money to be made to just bet him to win than there was to try to get cute with some of the other races. But for me, I'm just going to be singling Pharoah in my sequential plays, and I will be starting one. I'll be playing a double from this race into the next allowance race. I really like the next race. I think it's a pretty competitive allowance field over on the turf as well. So you kind of have to analyze where you think is going to be the strategy that can, best maximize your value. And I think that's a different strategy if you're playing Pharoah versus if you're trying to beat him.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to try to beat Farrell, there's money to be made. I mean, there's always money to be made if you can beat a 1-2. I'm not seeing it, so I'm not going to play it that way. And if the exactas are too small, I may just, there's a few chances to make money on the rest of the card, and that may just be the way it falls into play. So, but yeah, I'm kind of on record as Farrell's going to win dramatically and impressively and by 5-6 lengths, and I think people finally get their Triple Crown winner, and I think it's his last race, and yeah, he'll probably be off to the farm by Monday morning.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I know there's a few kind of caveats for them to perhaps keep him in training for the rest of the year, some bonuses. So if he does win, it will be interesting to see kind of what decision they make, because obviously he would be worth a lot of money. So whether or not they risk him going forward, would definitely come into question.
That's going to do it for another edition of Down to the Wire.